and Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine has his sights set on a new job, and that job is New York City comptroller.
That's right. He has until the Democratic primary in June to convince voters that he's the right choice to keep an eye on the city's spending. Comptroller candidate Mark Levine joining us this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kala and Dan.
Yeah.
Always good to see you. So tell us, what's at the top of your list to change? What is not working so far?
New York City is in the midst of the worst affordability crisis in our history, and we need a comptroller who's willing to take that on. We also have a crisis in confidence in government. And I've spent my entire career taking on tough challenges, delivering for the city. As a public school teacher in the South Bronx, where I taught math and science in a middle school, founding a community financial institution in Washington Heights, as borough president, taking on the challenge of housing affordability by pushing to build the housing we desperately need in Manhattan and citywide. And I'll take that agenda to the next level as comptroller.
You know, there's been so much back and forth about the budget and the budget battle and the contentious negotiations that go on and so on and so forth. Do you think that the budget process needs an overhaul, and could the comptroller be part of that overhaul?
Well, the comptroller is already part of the budget process and has a huge role to play in approving contracts and managing the pension fund and much more. I have stood up again and again in the budget process, even as borough president, against cuts to things like libraries and parks, demanding better funding for things like legal representation for tenants facing eviction, an issue that I've been leading on for years. As comptroller, I will be a strong voice for budgets which reflect our values. I think that's one of the top jobs of that important role.
You know, some say that the folks who run for comptroller are really because they have issue with how the mayor is doing things. And you're mentioning some of the cuts, right? Some are saying, well, people run for comptroller to be the watchdog of the mayor and then want to seek that office. Is it too soon for that? Do you think Mayor Adams is doing a good job?
The city's in a precarious position right now on many fronts. I'm partly stepping up to deal with crises of affordability, of livability, of confidence in government. We've got to do better. I've been independent as borough president. I will be independent of comptroller. I will support the next mayor, whoever he or she is, when they're doing the right thing. I will push back hard when they're doing the wrong thing. It's what I've done as borough president. It's what I would do citywide.
What's your take on a lot of the shelters for migrant housing closing? Because that will free up a lot of funds.
Yes, look, I first want to say very clearly that I believe this wave of arrivals will be good for New York City, as every other wave of arrivals has been. I talk to the migrants all the time, and the first thing they say to me is, how can I work? It has been tough to manage this influx. It's been tough to manage this kind of shelter population, and it has impacted New York City neighborhoods as well. So it is a relief to see that we now have more people leaving the shelter system every week than entering, and that's allowed us to close some of these facilities. One that I have been pushing for is this very large shelter on Randall's Island. I think it peaked at 3,000 residents, and it's just been a very big challenge on an island that has a lot of recreational uses and youth ball fields, et cetera. It has been announced that that's going to be closed in February. And I think this is a relief. That doesn't take away from my belief that ultimately these arrivals are going to be very good for the city.
And that New York should remain a sanctuary city. The mayor has talked about executive orders to get rid of it. What do you think about that?
Look, I do not want a deportation force going door to door in the neighborhoods of this city, ripping families apart. That is not a hypothetical. Donald Trump has said repeatedly, clearly in his campaign and since, that he intends to carry out the largest deportation in world history. And I think the city needs to stand up to that. I
want to ask you just about what sets you apart from another candidate, and that would be Justin Brannan, council member, who chairs the Finance Committee. He knows a thing or two about money, right? He has said he wants to seek this office as well. So what sets you apart from him if somebody was looking at both of you?
Well, I'm only going to talk about my record and what I'm proud about, but I have again and again seen big problems in this city and organized bold solutions to meet it. As a city council member, in the midst of an exploding eviction crisis, I passed historic legislation making this the first place in America to have right to counsel for tenants facing eviction. As chair of the City Council Health Committee in COVID, I stood up for science and really became a national leader on good policy in that difficult moment. I'm really proud now as Borough President to have been leading the fight to build the housing we need. And of course, I have a technical background. I studied physics in college. I was a math and science teacher. I founded a community development financial institution. So I have the qualifications to lead in this job.
Speaking of public housing, very quickly, you live in Washington Heights.
Yes.
Places like Washington Heights, Harlem, seeing a lot of gentrification, pushing out. We have a business on later who says they can't afford it anymore, who's been a mainstay. What do we do about that?
Which business is that?
Make My Cake.
Make My Cake.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're beloved.
Yeah.
Their cakes are delicious. This is heartbreaking. It is too hard to run a small business in New York City. There are so many ways that the city itself is an obstacle by requiring so much regulation, so many permits. We've got to make it easier for small businesses like Make My Cake.
But the rents are so high. Like, how do we do it?
Yeah, look, there is a problem for commercial rents. It's actually gotten a little bit better post-pandemic. We do have an issue with landlords holding spaces vacant, waiting for higher rents. There's got to be a way to force those back on the market. I think that would be a relief to rents across the board.
And not only that, you know, you're entering an election time where affordability overall for the cost of goods, and so on and so forth, that is the #1 issue for so many. We just saw it in this past November, right? When you look at the election, how things were. How can the comptroller look at some price? Can you look at some prices and say, okay, I can get involved in lowering some of the costs?
Yeah, well, look, in housing, the comptroller could invest some of the pension money in a way that would protect retirees' income, but also build affordable housing that might not get financed otherwise. The comptroller has oversight through audit and subpoena of agencies like the Housing and Preservation Department to make sure that it's more efficient, that we're getting affordable units built more quickly. I've also called for universal child care. Free child care for people of this city. Right now, that's one of the biggest affordability challenges. There's a lot you can do with the powers of the comptroller office. I will lead to take on the affordability crisis.
All right, comptroller candidate and
Thank
borough
you.
president. That means you would not be borough president if you win or don't win, right?
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
Gotcha. Well, great to have you here, Mark Levine.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll talk to you throughout the election. It's going to be a very busy cycle.